Councillors, do I need to get the hammer? Where is it? We'll move it off. Bring it back. Okay, hey, welcome everyone. We're back live streaming, so welcome back to the council meeting. We go now to agenda item 9.3, which is on page 334, and that's community board members. Okay, so we just have to confirm the recommendations from the community board. Is everyone happy with that? And if so, can I have a mover? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Oliver. Seconder? Yeah. Councillor Burt. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against carried. So that's 9.3. Move now to 9.4, which is Timaru District Holdings Limited Quarterly Report. And welcome Mark and Fraser.
Your Worship, Councillors, thank you for having us today. Presenting the report to the 30th of September 2022. I'll take the report as read because we've covered a lot of it in commentary previously. 2 points to note of update. We're still tracking towards budget to the year end, as we are, and the note regarding dividend that was to be paid has been paid, so that's gone through. And we are happy to receive questions.
Thanks, Mark. Questions? Councillor Pye.
Is it normal for the dividend not to turn up when it's budgeted for, or was that, was there a reason for that, or is it just we got the budget wrong?
No reason. It's an annual dividend, so historically they've been paid in October, November. Last couple of years they were paid earlier. It's just a timing thing with Grindpool.
Sorry, just one other question. The operating surplus before taxation's around about 690,000. The current year earnings in the equities quite substantially less, but it's kind of hard to determine from the report why the difference. Are you able to give a brief explanation about that?
Less than budget?
No, the operating surplus before tax is 688,000. Obviously there'll be some tax off that, but the current year earnings that added to the equity is only 276, just right below it. I just wondered what other adjustments have been made other than tax. Does that seem like a pretty high tax rate?
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Thank you. Just not sure whether I've missed anything, but the Alpine Energy, the performance last year in the annual report, what's the state of play there? Have they, they've sort of had a few issues around debt, quite a few changes. What was their performance for the last financial year? And where's their debt level? And is there any surprises perhaps in store for us in regards to requirements for money?
The performance last year, as I think we reported last time, was impacted by being quite a wet season, so irrigation was down significantly, and so that reflects that has quite a strong impact on their result. Under the Commerce Commission default price path rules, they can recover a pretty significant portion of that this financial year. So that's anticipated. More broadly, the debt levels have been relatively consistent for the last few years, but going forward, as we've talked about in the past, the challenges around decarbonising the economy and re-energising the economy by electricity as opposed to coal or fossil fuels is a pretty significant future challenge for Alpine. So it has been well signalled that there are some challenges to delivering, or there are some challenges ahead.
And the only other thing I'd add to that is that debt levels are within covenants at the moment, and there's no surprises expected.
So they're within the 52%. So the 52% is the debt level you're allowed to go to on
I'd have to check
assets.
percentages, but they're within.
So is that,
Yep.
so, yeah, okay, so I'm sort of still reasonably vague. It's still reasonably vague about what is actually happening with Alpine Energy. Is there something, perhaps not right now, but obviously what I'm concerned about right now is we're going to have a discussion around some taking on a lot of debt, and that could affect any possible requirements for holdings if there was some sort of request for any funds required for infrastructure within any of your organisations. So we don't, no surprises is actually very critical right now. So the debt was up around 100 million. So what sort of, how much head capacity has Alpine Energy got? Do you know that?
I have to run the numbers to work out, but they are, as Mark says, well within their in the banking covenants, in the mortgage covenants. They haven't clearly signalled to us that they'll be coming to us for any capital.
No, and no surprises works from us to our associates as well.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Further questions? It would be useful to get a more and full update just around their, I don't know how we do it, but through their strategy relative to infrastructure across the region, into the future, and maybe just include that into the new year.
We'll do a specific update on them and Prime Port to bring back to the council.
Perfect, thank you. Further discussion, team? Otherwise, you're all okay? I'm happy to move the reports that the be received and noted. Can I have a seconder, Councillor Scott? Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thanks, team. Appreciate that. Welcome now, Tony and Nigel for the VT quarterly update, quarterly report. And over to you.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to speak here, Mr Mayor and councillors. So before I hand over to Nigel, which will give a more detailed summary of the report, I'd just like to mention a report that we've received from Benji Patterson. We commissioned this, Venture Timaru commissioned this to look at what Timaru economy might look like if we look through the lens of an aspirational lens. So we've just had that hot off the press, and I won't go into detail, and that'll be form part of the next report. But some of the headlines from it are quite interesting. So at the moment, we've got a population in the Timaru district of around 48,000, and the projection looking forward to 2050 is what that population might look like with some economic growth, significant economic growth. The population could reach up to the limit of a level of 75,000. And that would lift our GDP growth from around 3.2 billion as at 2021 up to 9.1 billion as at 2050. So it's a really good report, and I'd urge the councillors to have a look at this report when it comes through, and we'll give some updates on it. But one of the interesting aspects of the report mentioned, even if the economy in Timaru wants to stay where it is now, in other words, the status quo, we would need the population to grow from 48,000 to over 50,000, 52,000 I think it is, just to stand still because of our ageing population within the district. So, so we need growth in population even to stand still, which is a really interesting concept that not only Timaru faces, but the whole of New Zealand faces. So in order for that to happen, we need more people to come into this district, and the report's suggesting that if we want to get to that 75,000 by 2050, we need another 1,000 people each year to come into this area. So that's why a lot of the emphasis that we have in Beja Timaru is around what can attract people to this area in terms of jobs, in terms of housing, in terms of industrial land that new industries can come to. So yeah, I'll leave it at that and leave it to Nigel to talk to the report.
Thanks, Tony, and Your Worship and elected members. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to our quarterly report. The aspirational report that Tony mentioned is hot off the press. We are finalising our submission for the proposed district plan, and that report will be attached to our submission as well, so you'll receive it very shortly. Well, definitely by the 15th of December, I think, is the cut-off for the submission. So, not surprisingly, as is highlighted in our report and as we've spoken to quite a bit over the course of the year and a bit earlier, we have a strong desire to see and do what we can alongside council and others within the district to promote and enable diversity in our housing stock, which I touch on in the report. As I say, I'll take it as read there. I'm happy to field any questions, but just some of those highlights. The Scott Base, we had the school and community event, biggest event that Antarctic New Zealand had ever actually done, both of those in the district. That kicks off them embedding themselves in the district over the course of the build, and we believe beyond, alongside Lee's construction. And from a tourism visitor perspective, the cruise season will be underway next week. The first ship arrives on the 15th of December through to the end of March or beginning of April, 12 visits minimum. We've been working closely with Council and Prime Port in relation to that as well. So, and not surprisingly, we're full on into the big time of year around events, working closely with the Caroline Bay Association. You would have seen them through the Major Events Fund that we administer on behalf of Council or with Council. We're bringing Z into the concerts as part of an extension of some of the offering there as well. So it's been great to work alongside the Caroline Bay Association with that. And SCOFF was highlighted in the report, another excellent year for SCOFF, awesome feedback from those involved, both providing the food and those that ate it, including myself and a few of you around the table. So yeah, an awesome event, which is, was its third year. And then just the report highlights those monitoring indicators. We're performing okay, but the one thing I would highlight, and you've probably seen and heard, that through the course of the early part of this year and into sort of August, September, the tail that was the Omicron strand that came through New Zealand was exacerbated for us locally around with the flu, with the gastros, with the colds, etc. So that tail has been quite a long one. It tailed off, the tail tailed off, if I could say that. But in recent times, there's been a bit of a rise again as well, which is through the community. So a time to be ever vigilant. But speaking to some of our food processors, obviously in their busy harvest/production period, they've welcomed the university students back into the district to help bolster some of the workforce, but there are still significant challenges there, not surprisingly, and they're going to be with us for a while. So, but that said, I'm happy to field any questions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Nigel. Thanks, Tony. Councillor Piddington.
Thanks, Nigel. Just a couple of things. On the major events funds,
Yeah.
could we have a rundown on what events have taken how much they've got each time? Because one of the drivers for us handing it over was to get some new events, and just saying applications are over, you know, how much is left in the fund?
Yeah. The last quarterly report had a breakdown of the amounts that had been approved and to who. Where we're at the moment is a lot of those events were approved back here, but they're underway at the moment, like the Rose Festival and the Caroline Bay Association.
I get that, Nigel, but it'd be good each time to know exactly where we are, because as a councillor you get asked, how much money's round, who do we go to, who gets it?
Sure. That summary of the amount, like at this stage, those ones that for the November round, which is the second round of the current year, there was we allocated, I think, just over 200. There was some carryover, so there was really only about 50 odd K left in the tin, so it's been fully allocated now. But the next report that'll come into council for the quarter ending December, will have the full breakdown of the impact, the economic and social impact of those events that have been supported. So, but the one thing I would say is that the support that has been provided has been hugely appreciated by those event organisers, because realistically this is the first time for probably 3 years that they've, touch wood, had an uninterrupted hook into their events. So, but I understand. Thanks, Stu.
Yes, sir. So that's probably every 6 months we'll receive that, isn't it? Because it's going to line up with funding rounds and then reporting. So it's a good point, Councillor Piddington, I think. But it's probably.
We'll give you a list of who we've approved, but then the impact of social and economic impact of that funding won't be for like on a 6 monthly.
Totally. There'll be a lag. Councillor Piddington.
The second question, last time you presented you had 400k in the bank. Where are we at with that now? Because you said there were some timing issues.
Yeah.
And if you're an organisation, I guess if you've got money in the bank, we don't need to fund you as much as in a term if that money's just sitting there unallocated.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering where that 400k went to.
The 400k hasn't been spent. Our reserves at the moment are probably sitting around the 300 mark. As has been reported on over the last 2 years, our reserves haven't grown. We have spent the operational amount that has been funded to us by council. The other thing too is that has been supplemented by the third-party income that we've been able to obtain from central government, which is effectively being passed through for a variety of initiatives which have supported business, regional apprenticeship initiative, the transport and logistics, etc. And I think at the end of the day, the operational funding that council gives us is effectively that. The reserves that we hold of around that 300 mark enable us to be very proactive and to some extent reactive as opportunities arise. So I would hate to think that council consider an organisation as ours having 300 of funds mean that you fund us less, 300,000 less in the coming year.
I'm not saying 300 less, but
I think that's
an answer to what you gave last
I
time.
think that's a good conversation for us to have when we submit our SOI for the ensuing year and by the draft SOI at the end of February.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? No, if not, can I have a mover for the report? Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Burt, thank you. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you to both of you. Really appreciate the work.
Thank you, Your Worship, and wishing you all a safe and happy Christmas. Hope Santa was kind.
We'll see what Santa delivers this afternoon. Alrighty. So that's 9.5. Move now to 9.6, which is the Theatre Royal Heritage Facility discussion. So I'll welcome the team up. Welcome back to the country, Nicole. Just made it. So what we'll do, just as far as a bit of format, we'll work through a bit of a presentation or initial update from the team. Then we'll consider, I'm sure probably the team will talk us through it, but we'll consider what we've heard today and submissions, and then enter into a good bit of discussion. And if we could just probably hold off anyone moving, any recommendation, just so we can get a lot of the questions that you might have out, and then we can move into a formal part of the meeting, just so everyone has a fair go at getting their questions answered. So I'll pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and councillors, and to those online and in the public gallery today. So a big decision has been a lot of effort, time, people involved in 2 years of work to get us to this point. And I thought if I could maybe just spend a little bit of a moment reviewing the purpose and the reason why this project started in the first place, and the vision, and I'm sure those councillors who have been around for a while will and can join in and confirm some of this. So why was this project started? Rejuvenation of the CBD, to bring some life back to the main streets, to look at the revamping of our theatre, but also to bring the museum to another level and co-join. It has been a 6-year project and journey. I think even started before that, and we haven't put enough emphasis on what this will do at the end when it's built, the activities that will go on within it, the economic development that it will bring to the town, those are visiting, and also stimulating the other economic development from the private sector around it. Internally then, from a council perspective, what is it delivering? A new and probably very modern and even futuristic museum that delivers the history to the district as well as to the local Māori, and the ability for them to tell their stories, the activities that go on, inside the building from a museum perspective, the education that it gives to all of the school children around the area, and now all of the new activities that can happen in those spaces. A revamp of a very dearly beloved theatre, which you've heard from a lot of the submissions, and also some will talk about the amount of activity that's been online and on Facebook, and the interest, which is up in the thousands across the district. And I'll let Mark talk to some of those details. It's been a proud 2 years for me to get to this point, to bring an A-grade professional team of people in RDT Pacific, Rawlinson's, South Base Construction, and some very diligent, in-depth investigational work over the 1.5 years to get the project to this point of the options on the table, having looked at many options around it, having also priced those options, brought to the table, and also had the previous council to this one debate and deliberate, extend the scope, ask us to go away, come back with more, and now have incorporated all of those conversations, listened to stakeholders, brought those requests to the fore, and over the last 8 or 9 months, bring those into a new prelim design and tick just about every box in that scope. Now that has all taken time, it's all taken money, and where we are today, very publicly, 3 million plus, that is now invested in that site. And we're at a point where, outside of the options on the table, there would be more money expended into the project to bring other things to the table. We as a project team and officers around the table have now narrowed this down to options guided by you all and the previous council, and I hope an understanding from you all of the sheer hard work and the reality and factual information that's been put in front of you. It isn't our decision to make, I appreciate that, but I'd like to think that we have now turned over every stone we possibly could to bring you, listening to the community, what would be the best outcome for that area and for those buildings. I think, yes, the stakeholders have a right to be more involved, and they will be going forward. That is part of the developed and the detailed design. So we have listened, we've incorporated a lot of the information that came through this morning in the sessions, and they have been addressed and some more to address, but that also comes with a little bit of a cost involved. If we're judicious in what we can do in the value engineering over the next 6 months, then some of those things can be brought in, but certainly are involved in a stage 1 process to be delivered. For instance, I talk about the orchestra pit. We can do more work on that, but that is going to cost some money. But if we put the stage 1 beginnings in there, then that can actually be built on and brought if there is fundraising or we're able to find some funds within the project. We feel we've turned over every stone. What I would like to do now is maybe hand over to Mark to do some more info on the actual consultation process, and then obviously some in-depth into the finances. But I feel what we've brought you from a professional perspective as an officer and also from the wider project team involved, what we feel professionally is the best option for that space. Appreciating it's a lot of money. I absolutely understand that. And they're quite scary numbers that are on the table. But I understand this is a legacy project for the future of Timaru and for the future of the community. And that has been incorporated into the thinking and into the project team and has been at the forefront of all of the decisions we've made with the information we've brought back to the table for you. So that's me, and I think what I'll do is hand over to Mark, but I want to say thank you to the team for holding the fort for the 2 weeks I've been away. I've been listening in, but also aware that there's a lot of work going on in the background, so I do really appreciate what everybody's done whilst I've been out of action. Mark.
Thanks, Nicole. I guess I would just give a quick overview really of the consultation report. Obviously we went out with the 3 options that you selected in the inaugural meeting in terms of those 3 options around where the theatre could go. I've over 600 submissions on that, which is sort of up there in terms of what we've done in the past. And obviously those we're heavily in favour of the option 1 in terms of the theatre project. And I guess that is only one of the consultations that we've had on this project. It's not the only one. It's been a conversation that's been ongoing for a number of years, ever since 2015 when we started talking, I guess, about the future of the museum and where it might go. So obviously, hopefully we can get to a combination today. And in terms of the results of that consultation, overall heavily in favour of the option 1. The other options didn't really feature, but obviously a number of other people made comments around where they thought the project could go and other potential options that council could consider. And obviously in making this decision, you're acknowledging the weight of public opinion or feedback in support of that option, but also the work that's gone before, starting a number of years ago. So probably happy to answer questions on any of that.
Maybe some info on the amount of people on Facebook.
Oh yeah, sorry, yep. So we did get a bit of data today just on the impressions on Facebook. So obviously we use a range of mechanisms to get the message out across the community, paper, electronic. So in terms of Facebook, we had 84,000 saw the various posts on the theatre project, with over nearly 8,000 people interacting with the post in some manner. So that might be, for example, a comment or liking it or whatever. So the message certainly got out there, and obviously we had a number of other ways to do that. The courier page going out across all of the district, 28,000 households. We had a Saturday advertisement also in the Timaru Herald, and reminder adverts throughout the period of consultation, as well as the public sessions where people come in and talked in detail around the project and had their questions answered.
Cool, thank you, Mark. A big part of this project is obviously the financial implications and understanding how that is funded as well. So the information in the report is consistent with the information which was in the 27 October report to Council. The financial model I have also sent round to councillors and also met a couple to go through some of the detailed stuff in terms of how this actually works. So whilst we borrow, we're obviously funding this through debt, but the debt repayments are paid over 80 years, and that's to ensure the whole intergenerational equity of this project is really clear. So we borrow debt in the short term to pay for that over 30 years, but it's certainly sort of spread out over the 80 years of the project. The implications of this at present, so in the long-term plan, rates were sitting at 4.9%. To do this project is a 0.75% increase in terms of the preferred option, option 1, which equates to approximately $17.14 per average ratepayer for the first year, which is 22-23. What that means is it's a cumulative effect. So over the 8 years of the LTP, in terms of the remaining 8 years, it's on average about $300 per average ratepayer across the community to fund this project. And that's because there's growth as well. So at the moment we've got 22,844 rate-paying units. That changes every year. And so what we need to do is ensure that even in 10 years' time, those new ratepayers are still contributing towards this. So the financial model is actually very complex and detailed. We've tried to give as much information in previous reports around some of the other implications of other projects. So the commercial and strategy report on the annual plan was referenced this morning in one of the submissions. So that report tried to show councillors that if we did every project that was on the books as per the long-term plan, taking into account some of the cost escalations with those other projects as well, that the revenue to debt or debt to revenue would end up at about 2.77 times. That was really to illustrate to council that there are some funding challenges, and there will be some, as is noted in paragraph 43, that there will need to be some prioritisation and some decisions going forward into the next annual plan as well. I'm sure there'll be some financial questions, and we're happy to take any questions.
Alrighty, thank you. So we'll work around, try and get questions out of everyone, and then try and just step this forward. I'll go first with Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I have a whole page of questions, but Nicole, just wanted to go back to a comment that you made, and I appreciate you weren't here listening to the submissions this morning, but a very common, oh, you did? Oh, perfect, okay. One of the common themes for me was that there were a lot of areas within this current design that are not fit for purpose. So orchestra pit, back of stage, seating, the stage elevations, and it just really concerns me. Whilst it was a small number of speakers here today, I've read every submission, it's a common theme. So I'm really keen to understand from you how we've got into a position that our number one stakeholders are really concerned about what I would consider 4 fundamental areas with this project.
Thank you. Those items had been addressed in part of the consultation process and then in the feedback from stakeholders 9 months ago to a year ago, and they have been incorporated into the prelim designs. And whilst we've been away over the last 9 months, appreciating that stakeholders haven't heard from us, we've been in an RFP process for 4 months. And then from April this year through to August, we were working with the construction firm to detail price what was on the table. Architectus have incorporated into the design, and as part of the information we have, the whole floor area downstairs and upstairs is being recalibrated with new seats, and also there's been a visual process done from every single seat to the stage, with the options of removing a centre aisle for sound and for vision, and then how we better replace the sound and the lighting boxes to operate the activities on the stage. In regards to the orchestra pit, we have investigated that in quite some detail, and we have some issues with the amount of space underneath the stage, because at the front seating in front of the stage, we have to lower the stage from the back, which actually takes less and less space underneath. We also have real issues with water egress underneath the stage area. We have costed, and it is nearly $1 million, to excavate underneath the entire stage area to increase the size of the orchestra pit. So the question has been, and was asked of New Zealand Ballet and several other shows that would come to this theatre, would you use an orchestra? How often would an orchestra come with a show? New Zealand Ballet have categorically confirmed that they would not travel to this theatre with an orchestra. That would happen in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch only. They come in a van. They have to be very judicious of the cost of putting their ballet on the road. So there's only so much money available for a live, large orchestra to be incorporated to a show, and some other shows have been very similar in it costs them money to come and bring a live orchestra. Appreciating the local drama league do some of their shows with live music and orchestra. That has happened in the past, and so what we've incorporated into the design is a stage 1 option, that should we look to increase forwards the stage and therefore a wider area at the front of the stage for an orchestra, we can do that at a later stage. We can't afford to do everything in this. We were asked to come back and save money, and the enlarging of the orchestra pit was one of those areas. Do we really need $1 million worth of input to an orchestra area? And if so, how many shows are going to come with a live orchestra? And we had to ask ourselves that hard question. In finding an answer, a stage 1 that we could add to the area at a later stage became the option, instead of doing a lot of work underneath the stage, which would then create more work for us to waterproof underneath the stage to create that space. And we asked around at some of the other theatres how often that area was used. And for instance, the James Hay, they store tables under there and they very rarely use that space underneath the stage. So, you know, there has to be hard questions around what can be in and what can be out. It's not impossible to do, and if we can find some money, then maybe that is an area we can look in the developed and certainly the detailed, and we've got a real idea of where we can make cost savings, we can bring that back into the project.
But I think it's important to also note that some of the issues this morning were around access. So
Yes,
certainly
and
the
access
access
is
has been, like, you're not going to have to climb over a fence to get into it. So the access requirements have been addressed.
Yes, they have, yes.
So you just also stated that the current number, 57.1, is a staged approach? You just said there was stage 1.
No,
That is very
the
concerning.
front of the stage area, when we do the work, it can be added to. So what I call stage 1 is the first laying of the first brick. And what I call stage 2 or stage 3 will be to put brick number 2 and then brick number 3. So if we design the front of the stage, that we can then develop that to extend the stage in the future when funds are available. We can't do everything at once. We can't do everything at once. Otherwise, if you wish to extend the cost of the project and we put another $1 million on there, we will build the stage and the orchestra pit. At some point, we had to look at what is judicious to bring back to the table. And if we can design the stage that we can add to it. At the moment, the egress access has been addressed, and we're also looking at what we call a hole in the stage that will have a mechanical lift to it, where we can get things down below and can be part of the stage presence that a magician or others would use to actually drop something down and underneath. The size of the orchestra pit is the size it is now, but the option to bring forward and create more space at the front can be brought into the project in the future by making sure that it's designed for that addition.
Councillor Jackson.
Fantastic work you guys have been doing, and thank you for that, and thank you for all the information that you've been providing for us too. We heard during the submissions that the theatre in Ashburton in today's money was worth, I think, $10 million to build that, and yet here we are looking at a $57.1 million project, and we're talking about not being able to put in a $1 million orchestra pit. It seems to me there seems to be a whole lot of compromises that we have to make this theatre work, and it still may or may not be fit for purpose, and that's a concern.
So the 57, and thank you, the 57 million is the entire project, and that is 3 million we spent to date. It includes a very healthy contingency and escalation number, and then it has the cost of the project team that are involved on the client side, so that's the TDC side, and then the cost of construction. If we find savings, or we find during the detailed stage and the costing that we can either find supplies at a cheaper, or that the market for materials slows down, or they're more available than they are now, then that means we can then incorporate. So it's not that the extra stage and the orchestra pit will not happen. It is there, and the building bricks to create a larger orchestra pit are in place, that if we can find the funds over the next few years, or maybe in the next LTP we're able to put, or council say we can put some more funds to it, or some fundraising from the Drama League or other organisations, we can do that work. We've left the option there for it. It is built into the design. The option is there. We can certainly add it in, and it's there. If we can afford to do it, we'll bring it into the design. But it does not detract from the usability of that theatre. We've had a lot of specialists look at this, Marshall Day and others, plus the work we've done, and listening to the local stakeholders. There are many stakeholders that are not even in the room that come to use this theatre, and the orchestra pit was one of those areas that left. If we spend that money and we make it larger, how often is it actually going to be used? And that was a very genuine question we had to ask ourselves for the $1 million input.
Thank you. So, something that might be an opportunity for fundraising, etc. I would probably caution if something like that isn't in the initial build. It's no different than the covering over the sound shell stairs. We're future-proof for it, but with what's in front of us, it's not likely to be a priority for some time. So, if these things aren't incorporated, whether it's in the detailed design phase, and some other funding opportunities come, whether we future-proof to incorporate it or not, it's not likely, I don't believe, to occur anytime soon. So we just have to be mindful of that. Can I draw everyone's attention to Richard and Melvin's submission, which is page 255, and I'm really keen just to work through, have you got a copy, or can I provide? I'm really keen to work through, because Richard is and does have pretty detailed knowledge of the building and what does work and what doesn't. I'm really interested just to work through one by one to see if those things that has concerns about can be incorporated.
Yeah.
So are you able to just maybe work from top to bottom, Nicole, for me?
Yes, so the port, so thank you, Your Worship. The port audience sightlines from the stalls, so that has been addressed. So Marshall Day and others, as part of the design through Architectus, have been and looked at the optimum height of the seats and the canter of the floor to allow all of those sightlines. So part of that was also to take out the centre aisle, so that has been addressed. So the low understage area small, yes it is. We've looked at the storage, which was one of the main motivators from stakeholders, and we're able to put the storage of items and lighting and parts, not to say that we will have as much equipment on store as previous, so that has been addressed. There will, and it allows that an area of storage to become more of an orchestra area underneath the stage. So it won't be part storage, part orchestra pit. It will now be all orchestra pit under the stage, and the storage will go elsewhere. So the small orchestra pit, appreciating, yes it is, and holds approximately 11 people for a show. Again, we come back to how often would a large orchestra pit, how much live music now comes with various shows? We had to ask ourselves that question. We've built in the opportunity to increase that orchestra pit in the future by laying the groundwork in the design for that addition. The terrible orchestra pit access, yes, that has been addressed. As a fire issue, it has to be addressed. That was not something we could ignore. So that has been taken care of in regards to 3 ways now to access, 2 via stairs and 1 via the stage. No recessed truck loading dock with deck level for flat load. That has been addressed. The truck will be at the docking level, which then goes to the side of the stage and also designed to the stage. So part of the first of the ground level plans that you looked at during some of the drop-in sessions are all on one level. So the truck comes down and backs to the trucking dock, and then we've had a very large increase through that whole building back and through to the front of the theatre all on one level. So that addresses that area. The difficult truck drive-in access, that has been addressed with the trucks that would come off Barnard Street, pull in, and this is 11 metre fixed wheel truck. This is not a small truck, this is the standard size large trucks, pull in off Barnard Street, and then they back down onto a flat area straight to the dock. If we had 2 trucks that were coming and servicing a large show, then the first truck backs down, the second can pull off the road, wait, the first truck goes and the second truck comes down, and then the first truck can actually park in. So we can accommodate 2 large trucks, but not both at the same time at the docking station. Poor space in backstage area, wings, etc. That has been addressed by looking at a design for the fly system, European, that sits metres off the stage, allowing the wing space on both sides, especially on the side where the old fly system sat and the new one could have gone down to the floor. We've now taken it higher to allow wing space. We now have a new side area off the stage and a second large docking station off the side of the stage. Rising damp moisture, that has been part of a very extensive structural engineering work that South Base undertook, which was part of the time from April until this August to determine just how much work had to happen for that building. So that has all been identified in quite some depth. Bricks were taken away from some of the inside of the walls and sent away and actually checked and crushed in Christchurch for stability and also amount of moisture. Noisy fans in the auditorium, they're all gone, definitely addressed. No under balcony speakers. A whole new sound and lighting system, very modern, has been designed for the theatre. We'll address all of that. No front of proscenium rigging fly points has been addressed. We've looked at how the Isaac Theatre have addressed that, and that can all be and will be incorporated. No installed patch cabling panels for sounding lighting, all been addressed in the designs. Poor fly for access, vertical ladders, etc., all been addressed in the new design and as part of the new health and safety regulations. No professional stage counterweight fly system, that most certainly has been addressed, and it will be a very, very modern system that will go in there. Acoustic treatment of the stalls and the rear wall. We've had the whole building acoustically treated, the theatre rolls, so that we know where all of the sound and extra deadening speakers need to go around the building. So that has all been addressed to make sure that the quality of the sound from the stage as a performer, but then also from the stalls and the seating as a person that could have paid $80 for that seat and you want to attend a good show. So that has all been incorporated into the designs, and the acoustic treatment of the entrance foyer needed. Again, that will actually be addressed and revamped so that we don't get those echoes on those very loud floors. So I can confidently say that yes, all of these items have been addressed and have been incorporated into the new designs.
So just to follow up with the stage counterweight system, Richard's made a comment, but no ground floor side stage operation. I would imagine that would be part of that, wouldn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We're talking about multi-millions of dollars that is going into all of the systems to sound and lighting and the fly system for the stage. This is not, we haven't held back here. We've actually invested a lot of those funds for that theatre into making sure that that is A-grade facilities at the back.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Pye, then Councillor Pillington.
Thank you, Nicole. You said that we haven't put enough emphasis on the economic development opportunities, and forgive me if I've missed this, but as a new councillor there's been a lot of reading to catch up on, but do we have any data that would show that this is going to be money well spent for the council?
So when I talked about the economic development, it was the wider economic development for downtown and for that south of Stafford Street. So one of the motivators for this project many years ago with previous councillors was to address the issue of an area of town that was dying. Now, a lot of economic development information would come through Venture Timaru and TDHL. I'm not privy to that, and that could have been previous information before I arrived with council. So in regards to hard data, I'm not aware of any. I'm sure that there has been. But at the time, the development, I don't believe, and I stand to be corrected by Bede or maybe our mayor on that, the driver was to address what was happening in that area of town. It's multi-complex in what it's doing. It's motivating the private sector with an investment of multi-millions of dollars. That puts confidence in the private sector to invest their money. We've already seen that with the hotel across the road and what is happening with one or two of those other sections in that area. And they're live and there's interest and people are now looking. Council investing in that area gives other people confidence. They get to feed off what we're doing in the footfall that will come to a building like this. So the economic development is intangible to a certain extent. You can deal with the tangible of investing in a project like this, knowing that the rest will follow. But hard data, I'm sorry, I can't give you at this stage. No.
Thank you. And I think there may be, and that's a question you never know what's the future holds, but some of the work that Southampton Needham did, and council played more of an enabler role in some of that activity down there, but it stimulated private investment. And the thing is, you never know what tomorrow brings, but that's the idea, I guess. But to your point, data is preferable to have. Councillor Piddington.
Hi Nicole, appreciate the time everyone's put into this, and we've come a long way to get where we are, but I'm still not sold we're doing the right thing. Most of those theatre people this morning came and said it's full of compromises. You talk about an orchestra pit, for an example. How stupid are we going to look after we built it 3 years later, going in and pulling the stage up to dig under to do stuff again? But I mean, a couple of comments this morning, it's a 100-year-old theatre and it's not fit for modern purpose. So I don't want to be doing a whole lot of compromises. The wings aren't big enough. Way back we went from 30 to 40 million because we were going to bowl the back off the house and build a brand new piece on the back which would have satisfied the local theatre group. And you kind of narrow it down when you say they're only one user group. We used to throw them the keys and they would look after any international tour group, anyone that came. So to me, they're kind of the experts locally on what will work and not work. You know, I think Ella Thomas said heritage is starting to overshadow the theatre, and that we're that concerned with keeping the bricks at the back, we're forgetting about the functionality of it. The wonderful Bev Green from Temuka came and said she watched 2 shows, one in the Theatre Royal, she couldn't hear or see, went to the purpose-built Ashburton one and had a wonderful time 2 nights later. So I just wonder how many compromises we're going to do to deliver this. And while you say we are delivering the space, it's not in the area the theatre people and users are telling us they need it. You know, a green room right round the corner doesn't work for them. They need room beside the stage, which would be delivered if we bowled the back. Or dare I say it, perhaps we should be looking at something new. And I'll talk to Jason about finance, but I'm just concerned. I guess your narrative is totally different from all the narrative we heard this morning from the users. So I'm not sure how that matches up.
So thank you, Councillor Piddington. In reviewing and the local drama league, along with a lot of other stakeholders, fed a lot of information through various consultation processes to develop the scope. And when we came back with the first prelim design, and as you're aware, and we did a lot of work with the Drama League, we extended that scope to take care of some of their concerns. We addressed of that, and in this design we have widened corridors, we have extended the amount of changing facilities, the accessibility, the access, the wing space, the side space off the stage, as well as docking. We have looked at storage. We can tick every single box of the scope and the extended scope that we were asked to go away and work on over this last year, which was the original option that we brought back. That sat at $62 million, which was to remove the back of the stage house as well as the changing rooms. In spending some time working with the James Hay and also with the Isaac Theatre, which are 2 theatres, and appreciating that Ashburton is a new one, their wing space is the same. In fact, both of the groups that run the whole back of house operations feel that what we have now got as a design is better than what they can offer in both of those facilities in Christchurch. I feel we have ticked all of those boxes for the stakeholders, appreciating it's not a new building, but everything that's going in it will be comparable and is new. It's high spec theatre, high spec sound, high spec lighting, brand new seats, warm, modern brand new changing rooms right the way throughout on 3 levels with green rooms, extensive rehearsal spaces in some of the areas next to and in the heritage building. I haven't, and unfortunately being in the air, I've caught up with the YouTube of the sessions this morning. I feel that we have addressed all of those issues. It's not a new building, it never will be a new building because it is a heritage building, much loved by many people, theatre goers as well. But what is going to be there with the new facilities and the extensive modernisation that's going to go on will be quite comparative with a lot of theatres around the country.
Councillor Oliver.
Just a quick question. Can you guarantee to the for the people that are going to come into the concerts and that, can you guarantee that they will get a really good experience from this build rather than a new build?
I can't guarantee that.
Sorry, because I'm just getting from the lady that came that Stu was talking about today, said that she got a really good experience from Ashburton.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if we were going to spend 57.1 million, we'd be sort of wanting to guarantee to all those users that they were going to get the experience of a lifetime, because otherwise they'll just go away and say, couldn't hear, couldn't see, or whatever. So I'm just wondering where that sits.
So it would be foolish of me to stand here and say, absolutely, I can guarantee that, because every user may be there and experience something differently. But what I can say is of the two buildings that are being co-joined there, there is $26+ million being invested in the theatre role. A lot of that money is going into the systems, the lighting, the sound, the comfort from the seats, the visual. We have brought some high-end Category A professional people around this theatre to bring the designs to the table. I would be thoroughly disappointed if they were not able to bring that experience to the table for those multi-millions of dollars we're investing. We have to rely on them to make sure that they're bringing to us that experience. And we are paying multi-millions of dollars for that to happen. I would be very, very saddened if that was not the experience they're going to get.
We can put a Councillor Oliver performance guarantee at that if you like. Councillor Booth.
Thanks, Mayor Bowen. My question's probably around the consultation, probably towards you, Mark. I note in some of the submissions that they were unable to select anything other than they had to select an option, otherwise they couldn't make a comment. Now, how long did that last? And I understand that it changed. So they get a big red thing saying, sorry, you've got to make an option. You've got to take an option before you can make a submission.
Certainly wasn't something that we were made aware of, and we didn't put any requirement on the online form for them to select an option. So some people didn't choose an option, and you'll see that they put their own sort of comments about what they thought was appropriate. So from our side, that wasn't something that we were made aware of by anyone.
So the website was set up so you could at all times, you didn't have to select an option to actually make a comment.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep.
Are you sure?
Well, as sure as I can be. And I mean, often it's not necessarily our issue, it might be on the other end in terms of the systems that people have. But, you know, we had over 600 submissions. A majority of them probably came electronically. That wasn't an issue that we were made aware of at any point.
And I see also at the end there's another option which wasn't actually on the submissions. So was that added at a later date, or where did that come from?
Is this in the report you're talking about?
Yeah.
So that's really for the decision-making report. So obviously the options that council agreed on as part of the consultation were those option 1, 2 and 3 that we went out with in the consultation. In terms of the decision-making around the report, obviously we've presented those to you, but you still have the option of making a decision outside of those options should you choose.
Yeah, I guess
that wasn't an option that we were asked to consult on.
Another option. So that was, yeah, okay. Yeah, so I guess I'm just a little bit concerned about also the consultation with the key stakeholders. We heard from them this morning, and they would appear that they haven't been engaged properly, and I guess that's something probably in your tent there, Nicole. I also note that we consulted on a number of $17.14, and since I've requested further information around that, that's based on interest rates at around about 3%. So we sort of know that actually that's not going to be the case. So, and also the fact that we're not actually, there's no interest in being incurred until 2025. So in actual fact, if we start doing something, say next year, we will actually be compounding debt, which is not actually that smart. So, you know, you've got in there in year 2025, 1.2 million as an interest expense. You know, really, and probably that's based on 3.07%. Now when this report came out to us, interest rates were actually up around 4.5%. So we actually should have actually had the proper percentage rate in there, and it should have been on the higher side rather than the conservative side, even though it may have been based on previous assumptions around the long-term plan. So I guess probably to you, Zora, I'm wondering why that wasn't actually updated to a more relevant a number, and also you've all given me some numbers around the borrowings in the last year, and most of them are BKBM, which is similar to the cash rate, which is now 4.25 plus your margin, which means 5%. So it's actually significantly different, and we knew that actually before we went to consultation. So I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that we've consulted on the incorrect numbers. So that's so I'd like to know why you would not be a little bit more conservative in regards to the real world.
Yeah, look, I'll answer those questions first and look to Azora if I need any assistance. And there are a lot of questions in there, so I'll try to break them down. So certainly looking at the financial model that you've got in front of you, we've certainly got 1.2 million of debt in 2025, and that's largely because in 2024 we're borrowing $37 million for the project. So in terms of 2022, 2023, we're getting $11 million from MB, so we don't need to borrow at that point. In the back end of 23, 24, that's when the borrowing sort of kicks in. So in terms of the financial model, we're paying interest when it's due. So we're obviously not wanting to take any debt out before we need it. So I just need to correct that. In terms of your other question around I guess the cost of debt, so the model that you refer to did have the interest rates in there at sort of anything from 3.07 through to 3.47%. And as we know, interest rates have changed. So at the moment, we've got 72% of our debt is on fixed interest rates. Some of them are down at the 2.09%. So they're fixed until 2029. So we've been very smart in terms of the debt that we're taking out. In terms of the 78 million of floating debt that you're sort of talking about, Alan, we also have interest rate swaps of $71 million in place to counteract those short-term cash rates of 4.4 plus the sort of margin of 0.5. So council can then choose to enact one of its fixed interest rate swaps and get that interest rate back down to sort of the 3% level. So from a funding perspective, I'm relatively comfortable that the numbers that were put in front of council at that time are still in play, because we've taken so much early debt out at very cheap rates, and where we have floating debt, we have interest rate swaps in place at very favourable rates. Azora might want to jump in, but that would be my overall summary.
Yeah, no, I think Jason's covered that quite well. We actually, just in the last hour, did request a couple of modellings done at a high level from Bancorp as well. And so they have come back in those lines. So the maximum modelling actually at today's rate, and they've said caveat this because obviously the rates are changing up and down based on our projections and the quarterly reports that you do see. The maximum, if we were to look at the next 2, 3, 4 years, would go up to 3.8 based on today's rate. That could change tomorrow though, however.
4.25, so we'll go, if we go to 5.5, you would add another 1.25 to that rate. So
obviously council operates on a corporate model, so whatever debt we take out is put through the model that you've got in front of you, effectively is apportioned to the theatre project from the corporate activity spend. So it's always the average rate for the whole of council that we...
It's not project specific, it's across all debt.
It's a weighted average rate.
Yeah, okay. So we've also borrowed 78.8 million this financial year. And I've just got a list of the capital projects that we spent money on this year. It's about 56 million, so there's around about 21 million. Left over. So what's that money being used for?
So again, going back to the corporate borrowings, roughly 31 mil we reinvested in various terms, depending on the year timing. So it basically over the year, the quarterly one that we showed last time, we showed about 31 mil expiring at different times. That comes in with the project spend according to all other projects. So effectively, if you take theatre as an example, the first lot of payments might not come in for 6 months, so we're not going to hold up to that amount of money without reinvesting it. And we've got some really good investments rates on those currently as well. So, yeah.
So is that, so I always thought that we had 30, like when I started 3 years ago, we had around about 37 million in debt, and we had around about 50 million in cash. Or it might have been the other way around, I'm not sure, but it was, we already had those reserves. So, I'm still struggling to work out where that money's gone. So it's been borrowed, but it actually has been spent on capital investment. And looking back at some of the other numbers, the borrowings have normally been about half of the capital investment because they've always used some of their own funds. So one year they might have borrowed 5 to 10 million, they would have done $20 million worth of projects. But it seems to be around the other way now.
I think the key for me, if we look at the last 3 years of the LTP, we've delivered $34 million, $63 million and $75 million of capital program spend. And so that's been approved in the 21-24 long-term plan. As part of that, we obviously had some cash reserves, which we ate into. So how we fund things balances between cash reserves, other things and debt. And so it's the magic number where you get to the middle. And so Timaru Council has delivered some outstanding capital program results in the last few years as agreed in the long-term plan, and that has come at debt cost. And so part of your question around how much money, not where has it gone, because I think it's gone on the capital program, but we don't borrow, as Mayor Nigel said, in terms of the capital projects we borrow for the program. So I think we've been incredibly smart and borrowed quite a lot of money because we had it forecasted in our long-term plan, and we borrowed at cheap money at cheap debt. And so looking at this, 1.08%, 2.09%, those are fantastic rates locked in for the next 6 or 7 years. So we foresaw how much money we were going to need to fund these capital programs, and I'm not going to say we lucked in to the interest rates, but we have some very favourable interest rates, and we've got 71 million locked into interest rate swaps if the market changes.
Thank you. I'll go now to Councillor Councillor Booth, could you just jump out? Thanks.
Just had a follow-on question about interest rate risk. I read somewhere that our self-imposed debt cap of 210% gives us a really good credit rating. And so my question is, what will happen to that credit rating and therefore the interest rates if we go to 240 or even 280%?
So we have done some modelling on that as well. In terms of the credit rating as it stands, because of, I guess, going back to the liquid cash of 31 mil that we've got in the strategy over the last year of keeping up the liquid cash, that will be favourable to us. However, if we don't maintain those liquid cash at a very high level, that will have to be re-looked at and remodelled depending on the strategy that we take. So at this stage, that is not an issue at present. However, there's a lot of other caveats that we do need to look at in terms of the credit rating. Obviously, it's not just a financial rating, it's the economic conditions and everything else associated with the future spending of other projects as well.
So we are in the process of getting another credit rating, so we get it every year. So, and they look at forecasts, what we're going to spend, what that debt cap goes to. So we'll have more information at that point.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Piddington and then Councillor Shannon.
I guess in some ways, Jason, the last commercial and strategy meeting, you scared the bejesus out of me, really. For those sitting around, basically we can borrow 2.8 times our revenue, and if we go ahead with the project here as it stands at 57 million and keep to our other projects in the long-term plan, that's going to get us to 2.77 of our debt funding. So we can borrow no more money. So if anything untoward was to happen with that, it's straight on the ratepayers basically, unless we change other things we promised in the long-term plan.
The answer is yes. And so, look, we weren't trying to scare you, but we're trying to make it very clear that this project, because it was the question that everyone was going to have, what happens if we do this project and everything else? And so it's an important distinction that the information that is also modelled is the projects from the long-term plan, but they are at the level that we think they're probably going to hit at. And so, for example, the STEC project, I think it might be in the long-term plan at 23, but we have modelled in it might cost 40. So we have future-proofed those things in terms of some of the information that is out there. Since that time, a few of them have changed in terms of potentially Peel Forest and some other things, but this is what councillors will grapple with, that we tried to show you that by doing this and everything else that is coming up, without prioritisation during the annual plan, which may mean dropping some projects or changing them or doing things differently, that is the issue, that the level between our debt cap and the maximum is shrinking.
Right, just yep, that's kind of cool. That's what I mean though. Really, while we've promised the theatre and the museum, we've promised a lot of other things. So we go with this and go to, let's call it our maximum of 2.8. There's no flexibility. If something else comes along, a large amount, we will have to make some choices then, won't we? There's no extra money anywhere, relatively.
Like every council around the country is grappling with this issue. And so we are no different, and some of the choices are hard.
But there are also great opportunities in reviewing a lot of the other projects that are on the table. The same as this has had several reviews over a number of years. There are opportunities to be able to fine-tune some of those projects or re-look at them with a different lens and still deliver to them, but just find a different approach to the delivery. And that could be the STEC, and that also could be the art gallery, as well as other asset projects that are on the table. So there are always ways to deliver them. It's just a case of how can we maximise opportunities to do it a little bit differently.
Last one. I guess that's where I'm a wee bit uncomfortable making this decision in splendid isolation, because if we make this decision, maybe it does have an impact on the art gallery, the stadium, and other things we also want to deliver. So to me, it's a wee bit about prioritisation. So I'll say it now, while I'm for the theatre portion of this, you can't get me over the line on the museum, because that will be at the cost of other projects. So that's kind of where I sit. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the wonderful thing about the Heritage Project is straight away you've got 25,000 users that are going to come to the facility and see, the theatre tagged onto the side of it. But, I mean, for wellbeings aside and all the fluff, ultimately, still council is an infrastructure provider, and we've only got so many tools. We've got, debt level, we've got revenue. Do we increase? Those are the mechanisms that we've got. Do we delay projects? And I agree, as far as making those things in isolation, it's hard, and ultimately this sort of decision would be lined up with an LTP, but that sort of delay isn't ideal, and we are where we are, and we're going to have to make a decision one way or another today. And they're not meant to be easy, these decisions. So as far as, I know you've still got a lot of questions, but I'm conscious of if those that haven't asked questions or those that still have further questions, let's get the questions out and maybe refrain on statements, and you'll get the opportunity once there's, just one moment, once someone's moved and we can have a full debate, and then that's the opportunity to make statements. But if we could get some questions out for the team, and then we'll try and step forward. Thank you, Councillor, who was it? Councillor Shannon, and then back to Councillor Jackson. Thank
you, Nigel. I suppose I'm no different to everybody else sitting around the table here today. We all came here already after reading a lot of information, probably swing in one way or the other. And like a lot of people, I do believe that it's time to invest in our arts, our culture, our heritage. I think we're suffering, and as Jerry said earlier on, that's an important part of our soul, the soul, in terms of rejuvenating the CBD. I think it must be in the CBD, not anywhere else. But I was a little bit shocked and actually surprised following reading the submissions, because I did read the whole lot, to actually hear from some people that spoke to them with regards to how effective the design was in terms of the user experience, the visual and the hearing, the two most important things, and the back dock. And I'm sure, like other councillors, started to think, I wonder if it would be more cost effective to knock it down and build it again, to build an Ashburton sort of thing. And I know you've already spoken to Councillor Jackson about this, but I'm still not feeling reassured that the current design at the back of house does meet all of the Drama League's requirements, or if in fact what you have presented there is even better than what they understand and what they're used to working with, like you talk about state-of-the-art, modern and what have you, that some of these ideas are sourced from around the world. Could you assure me that they will meet their needs, in addition to, ticking the scope, that when they talk about space and accessibility, that they actually will, but they possibly don't actually realise how this will work for them at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. So we did meet with the Drama League before I went away on leave, and we had a session up at the Drama League and put all of the plans on the table for a good hour and allowed everybody to do a real deep dive and then ask quite a lot of questions. The feedback that I felt I got from that was that we had addressed the wider corridors, the larger changing rooms, the accessibility, the wing space, the quality of, and I can only say the multi-millions of dollars that are going to be invested in the sound and the lighting and the fly system mechanism. Now, appreciating the stakeholders want to be involved in the consultation process, and they will be as well as we move into the developed and the detailed. For the last 8 months of what we've been doing, it's been an RFP process along with determining the cost of the construction. There was nothing to inform the stakeholders about in regards to detail in that process when we were dealing with structural engineers, etc. But now that we have the shell, the design on paper, as we begin to fill in those boxes, this is when all the stakeholders get engaged. The size of the spaces is where we needed to land. As we now infill those spaces, this is where that consultation from all of the wider stakeholders really comes to the fore, because they're involved then in that more detailed fit out. How big, what do we put in, where do we make sure the storage is? We've created all of those spaces, but they will help us infill. The quality of the work that has come from professionals involved has also fed into what has come through in the designs. I do feel still that we have addressed all of the stakeholder requests. I obviously cannot speak on behalf of the Drama League, only what I heard at the time that I was in that session with them and going through all of those designs on the tables. And it seemed to me to be very, very positive when we finished the day and left the room in regards to what now was being delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go now to Councillor Jackson and then back to Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a bit of a follow-on from what Councillor Shannon was saying. There were a number of people during the submission process that mentioned about getting a working group together, council officers, a councillor or a couple of councillors. I think it's been done in the past. I'm not quite sure how effective that was. And perhaps some of the other local stakeholders as well, to look at those plans before they're set in concrete. You comfortable with that happening?
Yes, we can actually do that again. I think we have to also be conscious that if we change much of the size of the spaces, that comes with a cost. That's a square metre cost. And we have to be conscious of not changing those prelim designs too much, otherwise we go back into that design process. But certainly internal walls can be moved around. We've got an envelope of space to work with. It's how we infill all of that. We've addressed the access points and all of that. So certainly we can get a working group together. It won't necessarily, though I will be involved in delivering the vertical. I think this is where also our new GM of Recreation and Culture comes into the mix, to lead that activity and work with their teams, who will then be leading and managing this building when it's completed. And I think it's very important that their input with Nigel and his team comes to the fore as part of this workshop group.
Yeah, thank you. Look, and whatever the decision, if something's going forward in some shape or form, I'd propose that we'd add a couple of resolutions, one being in and around what the governance structure from an elected member point of view is moving forward, and also what that commitment is to the stakeholder engagement through that detailed design process. And we know those key ones that are presented, such as Drama League, Audio Dynamite, there's probably others, Vibrant lighting, some of those sorts of ones that are, have key integral knowledge, so we can build those into resolutions as well. So we were Councillor Scott and then Councillor Pye.
Thanks. I have a real fear that this is the cart leading the horse. We have no budgets, we've got no marketing plans, our prioritisation of projects isn't done. Our financial strategy, again, isn't going to be looked at until the annual plan, and it really concerns me that we're at preliminary design. I don't believe we have met the needs of our stakeholders after today's discussions, and we're naive to sit here and think that 57.1 million is the number. It is going to increase by at least 10 to 15%. We're not in detailed design, and I really don't know how, as a council, we're going to address that continued increase when we're going to blow through our debt ceiling. And I feel very uncomfortable that we're sitting here with the cart leading the horse when there are so many other variables out there to make such a large decision when we're at preliminary design phase.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Though we are at prelim design, it's the second prelim design. So we've actually done an awful lot of work over the last year and a half on 2 prelim designs. The second prelim design has been based on the first. In going through that process, we had a second consultation, which a year ago extended the scope, and we brought into the scope all of that consultation, appreciating that the stakeholders have not been involved in the work that we were doing, but there was nothing that we could consult with them on because we were working on the consultation information, embedding that into the new design and bringing it back to where we are. In regards to the costings, they have been detailed and gone through by South Base Construction to put a number on the table. They actually spoke to many of the trades across 60%, nearly 70% of the cost of this project. Bearing in mind they're a construction firm, they also know the cost of materials. They know what they're purchasing, they know what's coming up next year and very possibly the year after. They can't obviously deal with inflation, but they've added that into their numbers. When they put a number forward, it's not a best guess. We have also made sure that we have put a lot of money on the table there for contingency and escalation. We, with Rawlinsons, have anticipated that. South Base Construction, along with Rawlinsons, are extremely confident of the design that is currently on the table Their estimation is not 57 million, it is less than that. The 57 million is obviously has got contingency and has got some costs on client side and what we've spent to date. The 57.1 is what it will cost when we've finished and we get to the other side. Yep, and I don't believe that there is a 15 or 20% increase in the cost coming unless those designs change.
But you've even, okay, well that's fine. Well, you and I can disagree on that, and that's fine. I also work in this industry and see the cost escalation from one stage to the next, so we can differ on that. But I still am concerned that we got ourselves into a position that you're talking about increasing all the contingencies that sit in there, all of these extra stuff. Why have we elevated it so severely then if this isn't the true cost? You're saying we've got large contingencies in there, we've got large all of this. Then let's be honest about what is this actually going to cost? Is it actually only going to be 35 million and we're sitting here and having a debate about actually getting a project going when really we've escalated or elevated the costing so much they aren't real?
So we judiciously, in projects like this, always anticipate a contingency, so that contingency is put aside. What I've also done as working with the team is anticipated any further escalation given what's happening in the wider world, and we've looked at that for this year and next year, so we've anticipated that. If that does not come to fruition, then the project cost should go down. But we've anticipated that in the future. We have put that on there to make sure that we don't get another shock in 6 months' time when we start to work through the developed to nail that number. South Base have confidently, given what they know at this stage, without going through the developed and into detailed, what they feel this is going to cost them to build. Now, they do a lot of work around the Ministry of Education and many other buildings, and this is how they put a number forward. We then, in the developed, working with the stakeholders and others, infill with some more information in regards to that finer detail. They then can put a stake in the ground in 6 to 7 months of exactly how much that is going to cost. Right now, unless there are unknown unknowns to the construction industry, to the state of the Theatre Royal, but they've done so much investigative work, I don't think there's another stone left to be unturned there. They feel very confident that the number they've put on the table, which I can't tell you in this room because there's some confidentiality around further negotiation, that I don't wish to compromise for the community, because if we give away our bargaining position, how can I bring the best dollar to the table? The team still want to work in driving those numbers down. South Base expect us to do that. That gives them some headroom for other things or to bring the cost down. But we have anticipated those extra costs, and if we fix a number in 6 months, there will be no further costs. But it certainly will not be any more than the 57.1 that we've forecast across the overall project.
It's on. It's recorded. It's on live stream. Unfortunately, the camera was at me while Nicole was talking, so yeah, we'll just go off and on so the camera moves around. So we're going now to Councillor Pye. I'm conscious that some others haven't spoken as well, and then we'll come to Councillor Booth as well. So Councillor Pye.
Thank you. How much longer do you think the current museum's fit for purpose? And if we don't do the museum side or the Heritage Centre side of it now, we're just delaying the inevitable and we'll be up for a $10 or $20 million spend in 10 years' time.
The answer is, it has grown past, not the, yes, the fit for purpose in a modern age. There is very little storage left for artefacts of that nature, which are very difficult to put a value to because it's an intangible value that's linked to heritage. A lot of their storage is on site, but also stuff is off site along with Argentine and others. Part of the motivation is to now look at a modern museum in how we tell the stories of the past into the future. They have needed a lot more space. They can only ever put on show a very small percentage, and I believe it's under 5 of what they have in stock to be able to tell the stories of the heritage of this area. Yes, they would be putting forward papers if this was not to happen for a new facility. I would suggest straight after this, if it doesn't come to the fore. It will happen. It is required, without a doubt.
Yeah, look, and I've been here 4.5 years, and the museum was already in the long-term plan when I arrived. I'm sure Philip can give us the correct date, but it must have been the time before, I assume. Councillor we'll go to Councillor Booth and then Councillor Parker and Councillor Burt, if you want to jump.
Yeah, look, just a summary on the recently completed, or we're opening tomorrow, the bleachers. We started at, I guess an example, you correct me if I'm wrong, about 1.7. We then approved it at 2.8, and then it ended up being, I think we allowed 3.7 or 3.8 overall, but it cost 3.45. It's sort of like, I think we got to the point of 2.8 and thought, well, that's it, it's all good. But then it came back and it was sort of blown out. How do you, and that was a similar sort of process that you went through around just the working with one contractor and to get that result. So considering that, you're still pretty confident that your position is fairly solid?
Position in what regard, Councillor Booth, sorry?
Just the numbers that you've suggested.
Yes, the delay in the decisions for the bleachers, given that the number that was put into the long-term plan preceded by a number of years the actual delivery of the build. So by the time we went to market, which also happened a year after the beginning of COVID, we hit the cost increases across the board. The RFP process was very thorough, even though, and it is publicly noted, we only had the one bid. They were treated and did not know that they were the only bid. And they went through the same process. The cost of doing those bleachers, if a decision had been reached a lot earlier, would have been less, without a doubt. We were caught in the escalation in the construction market, cost of steel, cost of concrete, and that's what we paid for. There was definitely an increase. Now we've learned that lesson, and this is part of this decision over this last year that we've been away. That has brought the increase to this project, without a doubt. And so time is money. I think in the construction industry everybody understands that, and that's been very, very true this last 12 months.
I'll just get C to talk to
that. Thank you, Your Worship. In the long-term plan in 2018, it was an estimate only. There was it was simply put in as an estimate of the cost at that time, which had been predated on some unit rates, and that was it.
There are lots of examples actually where we do go under budget, but they don't make great headlines. But we'll go now to Councillor Burt. Yep.
I'm mindful of the fact that this is a considerable situation and requires people to make statements, and so I don't really have any questions with the.
You're not allowed to make statements.
But everyone's made statements here, and I just want to pull a few things together. And I mean, I can always say, is that right at the end of it, if that makes you comfortable?
I'll give you some liberty. I'm expecting the actual debate to be quite short based on that. But yeah, everyone else has had a little bit of rope. So
look, I mean, everything has been well considered. Everything addressed here today is needed. I'm really mindful of the new councillors that have come on, and they need to know this, and they haven't been part of the evolution of it. Somehow, in the discussions, we seem to continually forget that we went through something called COVID. significant supply chains disruptions and world commodity changes. And case in point, Councillor Booth had just addressed that with the bleachers. And this is what we're hearing, is that today there was disconnect between some of our stakeholders, but that's been addressed through the process, and I'm comfortable that most of that has been addressed and it's in there, and they'll be pulled into the process going forward. The contingencies are there to address that. One of the things I'm uncomfortable with, and has been addressed by Councillor Scott, is the fact that we don't have a prioritisation plan. This was like the first cab off the rank. It's been in our LTP for God knows how long. It's been a massive evolution through the COVID and everything like that, which dragged it out. So yes, we're going to have to make some hard decisions going forward. If we make a decision on this to go forward, then yes, we're going to have to cut our cloth and certain things in LTP are going to drop off. Am I comfortable with our debt cover and what we've done there? Yes, I am. And I'm comfortable that, that in terms of what the public expectations are, and we hear it time and time again in this council chamber, we must listen to our public. And the moment we go to consultation and we don't like the outcome, we blame the process. And that's what I'm hearing a bit of today as well. We've got to be mindful of that. We went out with it, we've had 2 lots of consultation, and if you're going to vote against this based on your preference for another project, that's a shame. But I mean, we all have a right to do so. I am comfortable where we've landed. It's a shame we don't have a prioritisation among the councillors for true transparency. But in terms of what we have here today, we need to make a decision based on the consultation we've done with our public.
Thank you. Yeah, look, we do.
Is that right?
That's we do have a prioritisation effectively through the LTP and where the budget's at. Look, I'll give Councillor Parker the opportunity, and then I'll be pretty keen for us to move this forward.
Thank you, Mayor Bowen. I don't really have any questions as such. Just the concern about being fit for purpose, the orchestra pit once again, for total accessibility. I'm gathering if there's going to be a lift, then people in wheelchairs, walking frames, prams can access that. Just another concern with the viewing of the seats, if there's no tilt down the bottom level, and if the stage is flat as well, how well is the user experience going to be? I think for adding cultural wellbeing into our society and into our district, it's an important part. I think it's really important that we bring the stakeholders on the journey, and we do need to look at prioritisation of other projects moving forward. And I think it will be looking at those cultural and leisure projects. That's where I sit. The project of microfiltration for our water is very important, and I would not like to see that pushed down the track at all. But so that's where I would see that would cut our cloth, or would look at the level of service that we're currently providing to our ratepayers. Is there any movement with our level of service? So not any questions as such, but just making sure that it is a fit for purpose user experience. It's for the people, that it will be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm pretty keen to move it forward. Look, I just remind you that I think this decade very much is for this council and different councils, albeit different places in time, but I think we've done so well with our horizontal infrastructure over the years, and this decade is about catching up on the community facilities, and that's why we've got so many of them in front of us, and there are going to be some hard decisions around prioritisation, and we've got annual plan and LTP ahead of us, and there's going to be some good debates around the table on how we achieve, but I'm pretty confident that we can achieve maybe not all we want for the community, but there's going to be some compromises. So look, that's it from me. Is there anything else from the team to add? And then I'm pretty keen for us to move into debate, and that would require someone to move a motion, and we can formalise something. So call for a motion. No one will be judged. Councillor, this is what you're here for. That's the hard decisions. Councillor Jackson.
632 submissions. I can only assume that those people that didn't make a submission want us to make a decision. That's what we're elected for. That's 81.49% in favour of option 1, to have that preferred option there. As Aristotle said, there is no great genius without some touch of madness. So I had to get that in there. So I'd like to move that that we do move forward with option 1, which is the wishes of those people that submitted.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I will just deal with the first recommendation by itself.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Burt, so second it? Yep. Cool, so I've got to move it with Councillor Jackson. Councillor Burt has seconded it. For the record, we're all good. You've just spoken for the motion effectively, Councillor Burt, so I'm comfortable with that. Further discussion, would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Pye.
I'd like to speak for the motion, but I wondered what the process is around having some caveats around that. So to quote Chris Thomas this morning, I feel as a new councillor we're in a compromised position, and if we don't support it, we'll end up with nothing, and that concerns me, and that's why I think we should support it. But I want to have some reassurance or some control around how we control the cost from here, how we meet the expectations of the community and make sure it's fit for purpose, and whether there's some opportunity to reduce the cost for council by fundraising or having some community input, and how we're going to have a really strong focus on our debt moving forward to make sure that we have got some buffer, not that we meet that debt cap, but we've actually got some room to make some decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pye. And to that point, I think we'll deal with number 1, but I think there's a whole lot of other things we do need to tidy up for those points, if that is to go forward. So I think Councillor Scott, you...
I agree with Councillor Pye, there needs to be some rigour around the next steps. I'd also like to see the budgets and marketing plans developed now, not in July. We need to be really looking at that now. And I think that prioritisation of other projects should commence. I think that is we need to be making informed decisions on that next phase when it comes in February, that we really all are in agreement on those next steps.
Yeah, perfect. And that's what we will work through with the annual plan. So, and look, I'd go to the point that we need to look at capital projects. I know officers might not enjoy me saying this, but line by line, don't want to quote a Wayne Brown or anything, but you know, that's probably where we're at, and we do need to have a pretty good look at it. Councillor Shannon, if you're not speaking against the motion, because I've had 4 speakers now speak for the motion, so that would normally be enough, but I'll give you some liberty if you wish to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, actually speaking for, again, supporting what Councillor Pye and Councillor Scott said, and looking ahead to February, I think we need to organise now appointment of councillors, or at least 2 councillors to that project team, to ensure that we're not just being reported back to once every 6 weeks. Okay.
I think a review of that project steering group is required. Yeah.
Yeah, preempted. Actually, perhaps, Bede, would you just like to speak to some of those finer points in regard to what resolution might follow?
So thank you, Your Worship. So if you, just to address, and very comfortable getting it refined or amplified, but that there would be to your point, Councillor Pye, about how do you manage, and well, a number of you, how do you manage the costs? That's through the project control group, and that would have a governing body members on it in addition, so that there would be a project control group with some officers and governing body members. That would be the usual way. In terms of your concern about it being fit for purpose and not too many compromises, that again, I suppose, falls under the project control group, and it ensures that there's a strong stakeholder engagement, protocols and processes that bring some of those submitters that we heard today to ensure that the concerns that they want embedded into the design are tabled with the right people at the right time. There is the, if you like, the operating model, if we can give it that term, and Philip Howe is here. We had commenced on that. I think it was before the election, Philip, that you presented to it, but there is an operating model we had commenced on, and so that would continue again. That would be something that the project control group would look at. So what you find, I think, in addressing these issues is it comes back in under a strong project control, and you have a group, and its composition ensures that there is a blend of officers and governing body members there, informed by some of the advisors that Nicole has drawn into this project. The prioritisation of other work will be an ongoing issue between not just from now into the annual plan and onto the long-term plan. It is that is the reality of how that will unfold, because those priorities will evolve as the projects continue on and they develop. So that, but that's an all of council decision, that one in terms of the priorities. So, Your Worship, I think it probably comes back to the project control group having composition of elected officers, elected members and officers on it, and they would then set the terms of reference that would ensure that a number of the concerns here are managed on an ongoing basis, and it can report back regularly to one of the committees, culture or something like that.
Thank you, and we can tidy that up as a resolution after the fact. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, look, I think we're all elected here. We're just here in a moment of time. So our responsibilities as councillors is to ensure the affordability for the community of the Works Plans program. So I guess, when I first came to council, we had debt of around under 50 million. And what we're about to approve is taking it through and multiplying it by 6 times. And under 1 multiplier. Now we are talking about in the next 6 years taking it right up to the max, and that's based on 75% of the projects being completed. Therefore, the whole 100%, we averaged this year, I believe, over 90% of achievement in our projects, yet we're actually only factoring in achieving 75%. That means that we are potentially going up to 330 million. So you need to ask yourselves and have a look at yourselves and think about the fact where you're taking this council. 50 million up to 300 million. And we are here just in a moment of time. And perhaps you won't be here next time. But you will have settled this district with a huge increase in costs and debt and the lack of a place to go for other councils and councillors to come after us. So I'm very concerned.
So that was speaking against the motion. You're factually incorrect, taking 30 to 330, but that's fine. I'll take that as an opinion. Any further? Councillor Piddington.
Yeah, look, I'm also speaking against the motion, not because I don't want the culture, the theatre or the museum, but I'm concerned that this will take our debt cap to 2.8%, which we're making a decision now that will affect our ratepayers. Because things happen we don't expect, and when we can't borrow any money, it's straight back on our ratepayers. So when the rate rises come because of this decision and the lack of prioritisation of other things in the long-term plan that we've agreed to, we're going to have to slice them somewhere. So that's the reason why I'm voting against the motion.
Thank you. So, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I'm just here. I'm going to vote against the motion as well. This project's consumed this council for far too long, and I definitely think that we owe the theatre group a theatre, and I'm happy to that a theatre should be built, whether it's brand new. I think personally, I think it should be multi-use and it should be brand new. So that's why I'm going against the motion.
Cool, thank you. I think we've all had enough discussion to talk for and against, so I'll just call for a division straight up and we'll record the motion. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And against, please raise your hand. So against Councillor Booth, Councillor Piddington, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. So that is resolution 1 tidied up. And so there's 2, 3 and 4. I'll just read them so we know what we're agreeing to. Council officers to commence negotiations with South Base. Number 3 is note the officers intend to present the detailed design contract for option 1 to 10P in 2023, and then 4. And so we might tidy those up with the resolution altogether. So I'm happy to move those. If everyone's comfortable. Sorry, Councillor Piddington.
Just in that motion, is that within the existing budget? So
yes.
Negotiations, if it comes back, to your point, Stacey, and it's another $10 million, what happens then?
So you're talking for 2?
Yep.
Yes. No, I'd be happy to amend the motion to your point, Councillor Piddington, very well picked up. And then the third one is in regard to financial strategy, debt cap, etc., which has probably been the key discussion today. So with that amendment on 2 to include within current budgets, you got that, Jess? Yeah. I'll move 2, 3 and 4. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Shannon, any further discussion around those 3? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So then other resolutions, just to tidy up, I think we need the... yeah, thanks.
Mr Chair, it might be, I think, sufficient, I'll look at my colleagues here, if it's that a project control group is established and you nominate some councillors to sit on that, and then they would address the issues inside that. We could say, in terms of cost control, meeting the fit for purpose aspects. But I think I think you probably want the project control group to actually frame up or revisit the terms of reference to ensure those stakeholder needs are met. There's tight cost control, etc. But I think it starts with a project control group being formed, which has a couple of members, elected members, or 3. It's really the choice of the councillors to how many and who. Just see my colleagues conferring there.
Confirming that the project reference group is already enacted.
Yes.
And so what we do now is co-opt appointed members, council members to it.
Very yeah, so there is a project reference group or control group, I guess, and so it's really who would like to be on that. I think currently there was 1 councillor.
There was just Councillor Lyon towards the end. So rather than debate reference versus control, keep it at reference group. I might suggest a number of 3 elected members. It would be quite nice to tidy that up today as well, as far as those elected members go. Is everyone comfortable with that? So we could, as a motion, we could put, attach those elected members to it. So Councillor Shannon, was that yep, go.
I would like to nominate or suggest Councillor Scott to that group.
Yeah, totally. Look, can you raise just a hand if you're interested? I think that makes good sense with your skill set. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Scott, Councillor Piddington. I'm really comfortable personally with all those 3, so let's attach that to the resolution. I'll move it. Yeah, no, I like your style, Councillor Fye. Thank you. So Councillor Fye's a seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And so there's just 2 other things that So do we need to tie this up by resolution? There was two things that were raised. One was commitment to stakeholder engagement, and does that come from the reference group, or do we need to have a resolution to that point, which I think wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, and also the fundraising element that was raised and could certainly be of value to explore.
I think we can address the workshops through the reference group, so we can form there and the times and when to do that. So if we could hand that to the reference group, the project team will be there, and we can work with elected members in how we set those up, some for design, some for particularly the fit out works, but very happy to bring that to the reference group.
So as far as those elected members that just got themselves another job, are you comfortable with maybe addressing that stakeholder one, which I think is key, and that works well by me with the three that are there, and also maybe the fundraising gets picked up in that as well. Comfortable with that? Yeah, okay, fantastic.
Where's the budgets and marketing plan sit? Because that is another key factor in this.
Oh, yes, no, sorry.
I need to know that
No.
Sacred Heart Primary School can have their prize giving there, that the South Canterbury Drama League can have their shows. I need to know that the Sport Canterbury can have Jump Jam.
Good point.
Very important.
So I think that's probably a further resolution that we have effectively maybe a marketing operating plan, develop that within a 6-month period. I'm conscious also that there is money in the budget, so although some of this work may perceive from our point of view that it's not done, there is work behind the scenes, and also there's money attached to OPEX in the budget for further FTEs, etc., in the years when the new complex is open. So some of the budget is there.
I appreciate that, but if I look back to the Sea Bay days, when it came, I wasn't obviously in council, but I was part of the team that helped support that project. It was brought to the council fully ready to go, tendered, detailed, and we even knew as a ratepayer that it was going to cost me $4.50 to go for a swim. That is the detail that our community deserves to know, that it is affordable. And so all of that work was done, and I would expect this project to have the same level of detail.
So you're comfortable that a 6-month period as far as that detail? Too long?
I think whoever was it, Chris, told us all of the events that were happening in Ashburton this week. Surely we can, he said there's 100 usable days. Surely we can investigate.
I'd say we've probably got some of that high level work done anyway, have we?
Some has been done, and as part of the reference group, we had a line item to begin those conversations and assign them. So that will be something that Nigel, GM of the Recreation and Culture, will pick up and move forward with the team that will be managing and running the operations within the building. So absolutely will come through that reference group.
Okay, so don't need a further resolution, or okay, so expectations is early in the new year. You can help influence that, Councillor Scott, through the reference group. Okay, there's no going back. Okay, thank you. I think we're pretty comfortable. We've tidied all that up, so we'll move now. Thanks, everyone. We haven't missed anything, have we? You're all good. Thank you for all the work. Yeah, a lot of work's gone into that, so I appreciate all that hours, so thank you very much. We'll move now to 9.7, which is the Gambling Venue Policy Review Decision on page 364. And Mark and Brendan and Debbie, welcome. So I'll pass over to you. Obviously, we've heard the submissions and we've read through the submissions.
Yeah, so I guess fairly brief really. Obviously the purpose of this report is to make a decision on that gambling policy, to adopt it or not, following your consideration of written and oral submissions. So the policy that did go out essentially was the same as the existing policy with a few minor administrative changes. So I guess that's sort of the guts of it, but do you want to say anything, Brendan?
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Council. Just briefly, to add to what Mark has said, just to provide a little bit of context. So the Gambling Act requires council to have a gambling venue policy. The previous council approved that the policy would go up for consultation with, as Mark said, materially the same, but with a few amendments to bring it up to date with legislative requirements. There were 15 written submissions. Of those, looking at the wrong part here, sorry. 6 of the 15 supported the policy and 7 submitters did not. And of those 9 not supporting the policy, 7 stated that they felt that it was too permissive and 2 felt that the policy was too restrictive. 3 of those 15 spoke today at the hearing. There are a number of themes that came out of both the written and oral submissions. Happy to go through those in detail if desired, but otherwise happy to take those as read. Similarly, Debbie's provided officer comments against those themes, and if I may speak on her behalf, I'm sure that she's happy to drill into those as required. Otherwise, happy to take that report as read.
Yeah, Councillor Pye.
Could you just explain to me how the relocation policy that we've got in our proposal differs to what one of the submitters was suggesting? Because they were suggesting we don't have one, and I thought we did, but I think I may be confused.
I think he was misunderstood. We actually do have a relocation policy, and it does cover most of the items that he's requested. So I was a bit confused by his submission.
Thank you. So that's one, and look, the only other 2 major things that I thought were brought up is obviously, do we require a sinking lid? At the moment, the policy doesn't state that. And the other thing that was raised was 7 to 9 machines, and is there any appetite for that? So happy for that to be part of the discussion. Is there anyone that would like to discuss, comments?
I just have a question on that. I agree, I think the policy is great, but I do want to understand that variance between the 7 machines and the 9, and are we opposed of that? I mean, in this it says that we're not going to do it, but one of the submitters talked about the benefits across, instead of having 3 with 7, we'd have 2, that those economics of scale. So to me, it seems like a no-brainer, but it's not in here. So I'm really keen to understand from you guys, you work and you develop this policy, why you haven't sort of gone down that track. And that was one of the big sort of conversations we had in those submitters today. Sorry, question. I'm just trying to get
Yeah, sure. We relied heavily on a social impact assessment, and we followed that in terms of because it's not something that we deal with all the time. Like we'd have 1 application or 2 applications in 3 years or something like that. And the actual enforcement side of it, and what actually happens on the ground is actually done by DIA, not us. So we only do the approval in terms of our policy, in terms of the location. So it does make sense what he has said, because access, the number of venues seem to impact the gambling harm, from what I understand, what he was saying. So therefore, it makes sense if you've got more machines, you potentially have less venues. Yeah.
Because one of our large trusts here in South Canterbury, Trust Aoraki, they in their submission they talked that for us to reconsider that. So that's why I thought it was interesting that they're one of they are our local providers in that space, and grant and donors, not donors, grants makers. So we haven't really picked that up either in their submission. They weren't here today to obviously talk to it, but that was one of the key areas in their submission, was to reconsider that particular wording.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. Councillor Jackson, was it? No? Yep, Councillor Jackson, and then Councillor Burt.
Yeah, mine's a bit more simplified than that, but the Gaming Act permits 9 machine limit, but we're only going with 7. So there's no research that shows that going from 7 to 9 actually increases gambling problems. Not any research that I could find that was valid. So they're saying it's not the number of machines, it's the number of venues. So why are we at 7 when the Gaming Act permits 9?
That's historical. I don't know the answer to that. Mark, you might know.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I guess when the policy was originally developed, we brought it back to you to have a look at. At that point, you decided you're comfortable with it for consultation, so we didn't change anything with the policy. Essentially, it's status quo.
I can add to that perhaps, just in terms of some of those policy levers that can be pulled to impact problem gambling rates, or, for example, increased community grant funding or the like. The submissions all presented, or a lot of the submissions that went into detail presented different evidence and a different range of studies. And my assessment in reading that is probably number one, because of, as Debbie said, the relatively low number of applications over any period of time, or the length of time that it takes for something to come into effect. For example, PGF Group today submitted about a sinking lid, which works over a many year period, if not decades. And frankly, it's quite hard to discern the impact that one particular policy lever may have on the overall outcome. I think that's probably also reflected by, as one of the submitters mentioned, just the nature of a gambling addiction and the other factors that are involved in that outside of gambling. So in that sense, as I understand it, 7 was deemed to be a prudent balance. And whilst I wasn't at council at the time, I believe 3 years ago, am I right in understanding that it was increased or rolled over?
It was rolled over 3 years ago.
Rolled
so
over,
it was
okay.
historical before
Yeah,
that.
okay. Okay. And I also note, if you look in the social impact assessment, there are a number of Class 4 gambling venues in the district that have more than 9 machines, and that's just simply historical because they had that number of machines prior to the Gambling Act coming into effect in 2003. So I suppose in that sense the short answer is it was deemed to be about balance, and that the social impact assessment didn't indicate that it was something that was worth looking at.
Thank you, and that's a key point. It's only when there's change, and there's not a lot of change in the space, that machines are actually reduced in a region anyway, isn't it? Councillor Burt, did you have a...
No, it's just in the recesses of my mind. I don't think last time we or any time that I can remember back that the policy has come up as it does rotate through, that we had consultation, but there was some discussion, and we socialised it among ourselves in terms of our local knowledge and what have you, and I think we landed, the 7 has always been there. It didn't change, and so we went with it. It wasn't a bone of contention. And unlike this, where we've taken quite a bit of information on board and actually can construct a better knowledge around what that means with a 9 and does it have any impact. And so I think that's a very valid point. I think that for us, we're constructing this around the fact of our local knowledge. We're a big enough community to know and understand that environment and where the machines are and who's dealing with them. We know that a lot have got existing use rights that are more than that. So I think this is a very good landing point for us, knowing our community, and I think that perhaps we should consider the increase to 9 as part of this.
Cool, thank you. So, any other discussion on the item? So, would someone like to move, and happy for it to be whether it's status quo and or additional to thoughts? Anyone comfortable to move?
So, sorry, are we suggesting we go back to 9?
No, I'm just asking for someone to move either way. Yeah, just to put a motion, either 9 and or the status quo as it presents, and I assume that's the only amendment that some would want to make. Councillor Pye was, oh no, so was that for Councillor Pudding? Sorry, Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, from what we've heard and what we've read, there's things are actually working fine. The policy is good. I am a little bit concerned about the optics of going up to 9. Just a little bit concerned. If everything is working, and we all seem pretty comfortable with the policies that's recommended, I don't see the need to increase it.
Oh, that's fine. Would you like to move that?
So I move the policy as presented, keeping it at 7.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. Councillor Burt. Second as is. Okay, further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thanks, team, but don't go too far. Oh, sorry, you're against. Oh, I apologise. Yeah.
Yes, I'm against that.
Yeah, that's fine. Would you like that recorded?
Thanks. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Thank you. So moving now to 9.8. And welcome back, Azura. And Mark. And annual plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this report is to present the 3-month report to the end of September. Obviously, this includes those 3 components: the sort of performance, our performance against performance measures, the financial position, and the delivery of the capital program. So from a performance measure point of view, obviously it's early days, but things are tracking pretty well. There's a number of measures that we don't currently measure at this point for the reasons outlined, but 70% are achieved or nearly achieved to date. And obviously the report sort of details the reasons why some of those aren't currently meeting their targets. I'll pass on to Azura to comment on the financial side.
Thank you, Mark. So from the financial perspective, as discussed at the previous commercial and strategy meeting, obviously we went through a couple of detail level, but it's all tracking well and within the required strategy and debt requirements and so forth. However, I just want to flag, as obviously at the moment we are doing a forecasting process, and this will feed into the annual plan, and that is due for the next committee update will be the first quarter forecast being presented, followed by the annual plan. So those will be reset and presented to you. And in terms of the capital expenditure, I guess we are a little bit behind, and that will be taken care of as part of the forecasting process, and that's just 3 mil, but mainly due to rephrasing, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the performance report? Where is that? Sorry, Councillor Scott.
Sorry, just a really simple question, and it's probably one more for you, Mark. On page 369, it talks about the earthquake strengthening project for Eggentai Art Gallery, and it just says there the design stage of the earthquake strengthening project has been completed, and council is now tendering for a contractor to undertake physical works. I thought we didn't get anyone. Did I misunderstand that? Or is this a different wee stage and I'm just 6 weeks in?
I'm not sure I can answer that. It might have been. Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah.
This may have been written before that decision was made, which is why it's out of date, possibly on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly prior to that, because it would have released, yes.
But you're correct.
Nicole. Sorry. No, that's all right. No, oh, sorry, Nicole, if just so people can hear you, that's all. No.
Yes, confirming on behalf of the team that they did go out for tender for the work on the gallery house, and because it's quite specialist, they didn't get any tenders, so they are reviewing that at this time and may need to take a different approach, but that information will come back, so confirming that.
That's all good. Any further questions in regard to the report? There have been normally lots of questions. We must be getting tired. It's been a long day. Councillor. Sorry.
I was
Councillor
just going to
Pye.
say, I felt like we've had our opportunity to ask the questions on this report in the commercial and strategy meeting previously. I just feel like we're sitting here with no questions, but they've already been answered. Well, my questions that I've had previously been answered.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Is that it? You're going to go?
Can you just explain that corporate support, the favourable 1 million with the swaps? Is that on a quantity of money that we've got hedged, and that's what you were referring to before?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. In terms of the swaps, we do revalue them every month, and so depending on the point in time that we calculate it, obviously with interest rates, that differs each quarter.
What quantity of swaps have you got?
71 million.
71 million.
Correct, yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Look, based on the discussion, I think we're comfortable here. I'm happy to move recommendation 1. Thank you, Councillor Parker. That was a second. No further discussion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Piddington, yes.
Sorry. Thank you. You've been here longer than me. Just one question on capital delivery. We've only spent 9.6 million, yet the budget is 84 million. So that's quite a low percentage of money spent. Are we ramping it up, or are we not going to deliver? It's just that that's quite a small number versus the target.
Thanks, Mr. Dixon. I think everyone's heard Councillor Booth's concerns.
I can confirm that we are definitely ramping it up. This is the first 3 months, which is effectively the winter period, so not a lot of construction actually goes on during that period. And if you look at last year as a comparison, I think we're roughly at the same point in the process, and we still delivered the 75 million.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Piddington. So any further? Mover in a second. Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We get that right, not right. Don't want to make assumptions. Thank you. Move now to 9.9, review of local government. Welcome back, Mark.
I never left. So really, I guess the purpose of this report is to just give you a heads up around the Future for Local Government report that's currently up for consultation, and just it provides a bit of a summary of the report and an overview of some of the key findings and recommendations that the panel has currently come up with. Obviously, it's a fairly important report, I think, and sort of part of the trifecta of local government reform that's been worked through at the moment. For those of you around, it was 30 years since the last big amalgamation, and yesterday I was told that it was the 30th anniversary of when the first text was sent. So obviously there's a lot of change that's happened in the last 30 years, and this report really is around thinking about what the next 30 years looks for local government on a range on a number of levels. So really the purpose was to bring it to your attention. Submissions are open until the end of February, and at that point the report will be finalised and sent to the Minister of Local Government by June, at which point the government will sort of consider their response going forward. Just for your information, the panel is currently doing a bit of a roadshow around the country, so if you're really interested, there are a couple of sessions in Christchurch and Dunedin in person, or there is a webinar that you can attend. And in terms of TDC. I guess the focus around our submission at this point is sort of focused around the questions that have been raised by the panel in the report, but we'll welcome your feedback on anything in particular that you think would be of value for us to focus on across the breadth of the report. So that's the guts of it.
Councillor Piddington. Oh, sorry, and then we'll go, you'll go this way, sorry. Apologies, and then we'll go. Yep. No, you're right, Councillor Piddington, go. Yep.
Mark, I've read through it, I mean, but it doesn't actually say much. I mean, it's all high-term goals, and I get that, but the details are pretty thin on how it's delivered. So is that the next step, or am I missing something here?
Well, certainly from my understanding of it, the panel's still working through a lot of that detail, and this is the opportunity to feed into that detail. You know, there are some more detailed recommendations in there, like reducing the age of voting, for example, and certainly there's some areas where they've highlighted we want to hear back from the sector what your view is so that we can formulate those recommendations through to the Minister.
Yeah, and Councillor Piddington, I expect the sector's views to change somewhat from when a lot of this work started to now, just with that shift at election time. And Scotty, you might talk to this as well, but the mood in the room at Rural and Provincial a couple of weeks ago was not that they had a lot of confidence and or faith in this document, or were supportive of it at all. And it was very much felt like 3 years ago at a Rural and Provincial when we were discussing Three Waters, it was the same mood that no one wanted or had any confidence in the direction. So, but the key thing is, I think, is that we need to submit on what we want to see in it. Yeah, and work through those questions. We'll go, Councillor Burt, thank you.
This is the future for local government, and it says he mata whariki, he mata whanui, which apparently means a well-carpeted area and it's comprehensive. The carpeting over the top of us, that's exactly what they're doing. This is you know, with all due respect, everything in here flies in the face of what they're doing to us around Three Waters. And in Three Waters, we had a failed Scottish plan that we were going to turn into something new. And if you go back and have a look at where they've landed, in here we've got a failed Welsh plan for well-being. We're going to take on the Welsh plan on well-being. The whole thing flies in the face of what Three Waters is doing to us from this government. And to try and put this on any high level to say that this is what we're going to see is going to be for you, and we're going to strengthen local governance or governance or government is just ridiculous. So that's my 5 cents worth.
Thank you. Well, we don't have to get into full debate on this one because we are just receiving a noting. Yeah, Councillor Jackson.
Just want to ask a quick question. So, like, with this document, we're not having to support the whole document, are we? We can just support parts of it that we think are worthwhile and can make comment on things we don't think are worthwhile, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got some time, end of Feb as far as submissions, so 260 pages. If you haven't read it, there's one to add to the pile for Christmas. Yeah, well, that's true. So yeah, but it would be really helpful perhaps in the new year if we just get an opportunity to give some good feedback to the officers.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there'll be other commentary that comes through from LGNZ and Tautuara and other groups as well. So I mean, you'll have your connections to different groups, I imagine, that might have a view, so feel free to feed those through to us.
Cool. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to move that we receive a note. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Oliver, thank you. No further discussion. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for all of that. Just before we, no consideration of urgent business, no more in nature, we've done public forum. Before we move to exclusion of the public, just want to say thank you to Azora. Unfortunately, she's off to pursue new endeavours and be closer to family, and we totally respect that. But we've enjoyed you in the Timaru district. You've been fantastic for the business, and we're indebted to the work that you've done in the short space of time. So thank you. We wish you all the best, and we'll make sure we can create some job opportunities if you want to bring the wider family whānau back down this way into the future. So thank you. Now we need to move to exclusion of the public. We need just a few minutes, so you can take a couple of minute break just to change over. So I'll move that we exclude the public. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burt, thank you. Say aye. It's carried. So just take a couple of minutes.